The estate planning episode.
Do you want to increase your case size, closing ratio, and referrals? If the answer is yes, you will love this episode.
Hi, this is Eric here, and you're listening to
Highly Sought After.
Because my guest, Eugene Soo, is going to show you how he achieved all this by incorporating estate planning into his sales advisory process. With 12 years in the financial advisory business, Eugene is a well-trusted estate planner and legacy trainer among high net worth individuals here in Singapore. He is the member of Society of Will Writers and holds the title of Chartered Financial Consultant, as well as the Associate Estate Planning Practitioner, a sought-after certification from the Wealth College. To date, Eugene has set up more than 200 families and business trusts, which has led him to win the Top Trust Producer Award for multiple years running since 2014. And he has also shared his expertise on mainstream media like MediaCorp, Channel U, and CNA 938. So if you want to attract and retain high net worth clients to work with you, pay attention to this episode. All right, Eugene, thank you so much for coming here.
No problem, Eric.
So you started off your journey as a financial advisor, right? So,
Yep.
And then you became a estate planner.
That's
so
right.
So what's the story behind it? How do you switch and why do you switch?
Okay, it's very interesting. My first job was back when I was in the university, and I was in my third year. So I began to be a financial advisor, telling myself that if all else fails, I could still go out with a degree and search for a job.
Financial advisors and insurance agents listening to this can totally relate to you, right? Like, probably insurance is never a first choice for many people.
Yeah.
But it's something that they tell themselves, like, if I can make it, then that's it.
That's right.
Yeah.
So in my final year, I was actually thinking, what should I do? And, I just came across an opportunity and I thought, why shouldn't I just try it out? So I remember in my third year, I took a exchange from university to another university in Singapore.
Okay.
So that the grades would only be a pass or fail.
Smart. I do the same thing with overseas university. So it works for local as well.
It works for local.
Okay.
And I did an exchange to a university in the city so that it's nearer to where I'm living because the one that I'm studying is far in the west.
You kind of know where you're talking. Okay, you're referring to.
Yeah, so I remember there were so many times where I was at the back of my lecture theatre and I was just pretending to be listening, but I was there thinking about my prospects, who to call, who to meet after class. And there was once the lecturer called me to answer a question and I was like, I freak out. But yeah, I forgot how it went, but everything was well. And that's how it started. Before I step out to for my graduation, I remembered.
But what is it about the FA business that even make you want to actually start it during your uni days?
Okay. I think one of the key reasons why I wanted to start was because, I was all along working in a part-time when I was studying. As early as I was in my secondary, I was always trying to find jobs to support myself and to make sure I have spare cash. So I remember I was still teaching tuition, part-time tuition. And I even look at the rates that I was being paid, right? So like, okay, per hour, if you're teaching for primary school, $20 to $30 an hour. But now the rates are much higher. And I was just looking at the industry and say, hey, this job allows me to start even before I have my degree. So why not?
Why was so? It seems to me that making money was very important to you very early on in your life, right?
Yes, that's right.
Why that motivation on making money? Like a lot of kids out there may want to play games or make more friends, but for you, it's like money is a very big part. Why?
Yeah, I mean, it brings me back to when I was in my early secondary. I remember like every week my parents or my dad, he would just put the allowance on the table. He would come back from work very tired. He would put it there, and I would just take the money as my weekly allowance. And someday I was just thinking, every week I'm just taking allowance, but why am I taking from my dad, who seems to be so hardworking and so tired after a week's long of work? So I've been thinking, how can I help out, or how can I not take the money but yet survive?
That's so nice.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I feel very guilty, Eugene, because I have the same situation, right? My dad will give me pocket money, but I never think about how can I make more? I always think about how can I like work within the means of him. That already shows my financial maturity, right? Anyway, back to you. So you're thinking a lot about like how to increase that amount of money or how not to even use your dad's money.
Yeah. So every time I take that pocket money from him every week, there's just something in me. Like I feel that why am I taking? And I feel a little bit not helpless, but I feel that hey, why not? Why not let me do something? Let me maybe earn some money, or let me supplement it so that I don't need to take from him.
Wow.
Yeah, but
Nice.
yeah, but it was like I'm still taking from him for many years.
For sure.
But I knew one thing is that as much as possible, if I could stop that, the money from him, that would be best.
So that was your motivation, and that's why FA or financial advisory become an option for you, right?
That's right.
'Cause you can do part-time.
Yes.
Okay, and then what happened after you graduate?
Yeah. So even before I graduate, after I graduated, I've been in the line. Like I thought, oh, maybe this is in this line we do not have a fixed income. So it was still pretty challenging. After a year in the business, my mom was asking me, "You sure? Like you sure you want to be in this line?" And I was just looking at my paycheck. But we are constantly worrying about the leads.
Yep.
Like I have enough today, but what about next month? What about next year? So as we drag a bit further, after 2 to 3 years, I decided to stay put. I decided that, okay, this is where I want to focus on.
Why? Like, is it because you had stable income, you're doing well, or what was the reason why you stay?
Okay.
Where most people will leave.
Yeah, I think the main reason that why I decided to stay is because I have a really pool of clients whom I feel that there are certain relationships and trust being established. And I know that I don't really need to keep farming. I mean, farming is still part of the business, but they are always there and they will grow with me in the business. And all I need to do is to give them value and to be consistent. And that was why I decided to just stay put.
As a financial advisor.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, but then how did that switch begun, right? Because now you're an estate planner.
Okay.
How did it happen?
So after a period of time, I realized that a lot of my clients are, initially when I first started, they were all like fresh grads like me. But after about 2 to 3 years, I started to attract a different pool of clients where they are mostly coming from my clients' parents. Referrals started to flood in, and they've been asking me more complex questions. And for example, like they will ask, so do you offer will writing services? So back then I was still very fresh, very new, and I told them I don't, right? And I said, okay, if you want, I can give you a contact of a lawyer. And I went Google and just passed them the contact. And after a while, I realized that a lot of them, they have this question about what if something should happen? And instead of just giving them a lawyer contact, I began to research more. I began to sit in the appointments where they discuss with the lawyers, and I learned. And I realized that it was so interesting. Like, oh man, like this client of mine who have been with me for so many years is starting to reveal more things that he has ever told me in that one sitting with the lawyer.
Oh my, okay.
So I was astonished. But the truth is that the lawyer didn't want to hear much. The lawyer was so busy. And he was just going back and say, okay, so what can I do for you? You want a will? You want a, yeah. So it's quite sad because I can see that the clients do want someone to empathize and to assist them in this area. Yeah, and of course, that started my journey in trying to research and trying to find out like what kind of causes are there so that I can literally use that to value add the clients.
Got it. So, and then how did that lead you to going full-time?
Okay.
And even getting a certification, right? You mentioned it's something that a lot of people coveted. How do you end up?
So I was doing pretty well in my financial advisory. I even had my first roundtable in my first year of business as a student. Okay.
MDRT while you're a student.
Yeah, in my first year.
Gosh. Okay, now those of you listening, right? Don't worry. I'm gonna ask Eugene to share some tips for you guys for your final sprint. Okay. so stay all the way to the end. There will be a last category on final sprint. Okay. So you got your MDRT in your uni days. So you're doing well, right? Okay.
Yeah, I was doing pretty well. But I realized that the chase after success during that period left me little time to do more for my clients. In a sense, you can chase after sales, you can close the sales, but when your clients come to you for estate planning services, you need time to research, you need time to look for the right people. And that leaves me with very little time to even bring forth the services that my client needs.
Okay, so to help us understand, right? Since today's title is about estate planning, just in a very simple term, what is estate planning?
Okay. I always share this with all my attendees in a seminar that whatever you have I call your assets. So everyone is very familiar with the word assets. But the moment we are gone, when we pass on, the assets will be termed as estate.
Oh.
So that's a simple way to understand what
I
is
used to
estate.
have this thinking that estate planning is like house planning because estate, right?
Exactly.
Real estate. This is brilliant. Okay, keep going.
Okay.
So when you say that people come to you, your clients, and especially the older clients are coming to you for estate planning services, right?
That's right.
What are some of the questions they come to you and ask you?
Okay. So one of the very common questions that we'll ask is that, hey, Eugene, should I write a will, or what will happen to my insurance proceeds when I'm gone? Will we ever reach my children, or who do I give to? So as much as we help them to create wealth, there will be a certain point in time where the clients will ask, like, if I'm not around, how are my beneficiaries or my loved ones are going to inherit the money? Yeah, would there be any difficulties? What should I do in my lifetime so I can make sure that it's seamless?
Got it.
Yeah.
So these are the questions that you started getting asked,
Yeah,
right? And you said that it requires a lot of research, a lot of work.
that's right.
And what happens when that happens?
So if that happens, and back then, there were a lot of theory in terms of courses that will teach you what is a will, what is a trust. So I began to take all those courses and I read up, but I can't bring the theory to my client because my client wants a practical approach. So again, I began to call in, email different insurers and I ask them, but you don't get many favorable replies because it's always on a case-to-case basis and you need to have a ready case. So I began to feel that, wow, there's really a lot of work to be done in this area. And that was how I slowly pivoted and I thought, hey, my wife is in the IFA business. It makes sense that I focus on the estate planning and she focuses on the financial advisory. And that's how we can come and work together.
Got it. And so that's why you decided full-time estate planning.
That's right.
Wow. So question, right? There are a lot of estate planners, or at least I would assume that there are a lot of estate planners here in Singapore.
Yeah.
Right? It's not the first time we're hearing the word estate planning. So why do your clients choose you rather than another estate planner?
Okay, that's a question I always ask myself.
I think it's a great self-awareness question, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
But before I tackle that question, I probably want to share
Yes.
that I have 2 kids and I may not look that young now, but like 5,
He
10
does
years
look
ago,
young. Okay, I'm watching him right now. He looks young.
I always tell all my clients, okay, or even my seminar, because I conduct seminars, that I may look young, but I'm not that young. And why do I say that is because there's a myth that you need to be of certain age before you can practice estate planning. Because you are speaking to clients who are probably in their 40s, in their 50s. And they, whenever they hear about Eugene and or the consultant or the estate planner, and when they finally see you face to face,
Yes.
they were like expecting someone in their 50s
Yeah.
who are experienced. And when they see me, I remember the first few appointments, they were like thinking, how long have you been in the industry? What do you know? How are you going to evaluate me? What do you own in your assets? So that is something that I have been trying to tackle when I was younger in the business. And I would say that there are probably a lot of people thinking like, hey, I don't think I am suitable
Yeah.
to talk about estate planning until maybe I'm 40ish or 50ish.
Or when I have a lot of assets.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So how do you overcome that?
Okay, so I remember back then, I read a couple of books and they'll say, oh, you need to look pretty credible. So you need to put on your specs. And my eyesight was perfect back then, but I go and make a pair of spectacles just to look more mature.
Okay.
It's irony, right? But now we try to look younger.
Yeah.
Back then, you look more mature. So I did that.
Did it
and
work?
I mean, psychologically, it works.
Okay, you feel like you're older and therefore your words carry more weight.
Something like that.
Okay.
And I began to read up and research how do you actually, be more professional in this business. And I realized that you need to build credibility. So credibility is one big component of how I got started. But back then I was like, okay, a successful financial advisor,
Correct.
but not as an estate planner.
So where do you get that credibility from then?
All right. So I did something that perhaps everyone should also try. I wrote into Straits Times and I said that, hey, I have this amount of experience and perhaps you should consider featuring me.
Wow.
And,
Nice.
And that was how I ended up on the Sunday Invest portion.
Guys, you gotta hear that, man. Ask and you shall receive, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. So
when was that? Which year was that?
that was like in 2008.
2008. Gosh.
2008, yeah.
Nice.
So
And then you were on Sunday.
yeah, I was on Sunday
Nice.
Invest.
Yeah.
Yeah. So of course, after that, there were a couple of queries. People started to contact me, but there are just a number of them. But what happened is that every sales appointment that I go,
Yes.
I will always follow up with a newspaper article. I say, hey, this is more about me. If you want to find out more about myself, just read this article.
Got it. So I guess the way to build credibility in 2008 was being on publications, right?
Yes.
So translate that to now 2021. What would that look like?
I mean, I always believe in this thing called the sales formula, right? To build credibility, to build trust, you need to have like C plus R plus I divided by SI.
Whoa, what's that?
Okay, it's a
tell
formula.
us. Yeah.
So C was credibility.
Okay.
So you need to be credible. R stands for reliability. You need to
Okay.
be reliable in this business. I stands for intimacy. You need to feel intimate with your prospect. Divided by SI is your self-interest. Your client mustn't feel that you benefit more than they benefit.
Okay, so let's break it down, all right? Because
Sure.
for those of you who are still following us, right, the question that we started off with was, how did Eugene stand out from his competition?
Right.
Especially when he started this very, very young, right? And
Yeah.
your answer was credibility. In fact, trust, that
Yeah.
people trust you. So step number one was credibility. How do you do that again? Recap for us. Back then, how do you build
to
it?
build instant credibility back then,
Yeah.
I wrote in to be featured in
so
the
being on
Sunday Times.
publications.
Publications.
All right. Then the second one.
Now, reliability.
Yeah, how
So
do you show that?
basically, as I present, as I share with the prospects what I could do for them, I will always tell them that I'm here to stay because I have a degree. So I chose not to work in a bank, in a full-time job, so that I can be here for the long term. So it is to show that you are here to stay and you are not here just to try out the fly-by-night consultant. I think that's one important thing.
What if I'm only like in 1 or 2 years in the business? How can I show you that I'm reliable? Is there anything I can do?
Okay, so that's a important question,
Yeah,
right?
because only time can tell, right?
Correct. So what I did back then was that, again, I read and I learned that never focus on the weaknesses. So I would try not to address that in a conversation until they ask. Yeah, but normally when they ask such a question is that you have probably failed in the presentation. You didn't do as good as what you could have done. And they will ask you but you are only 1 year, 2 years in the business.
So therefore, the quality of the presentation is important as well.
That's right.
So that could be how we increase our reliability, right? How
Yeah.
prepared we are in presenting the concepts
Yeah,
or the
that's
case
right.
studies.
Exactly.
Okay, then you mentioned intimacy. How does that look like?
So intimacy is very simple. It goes back to focus more on the client than yourself. In every sales profession, we like to share what we can do, what can we sell, what can we do for you, more than about the client. So I begin to ask more about the client. Like in every appointment, I'll always make sure that I ask more questions that then I share about my products and services.
Give us some tips. Like, what questions do the clients love you asking them?
Okay, one of the key questions I always ask till to date is always about how is your family structure like? Right. So in estate planning, this is a question that I always ask. How is your family? Tell me more about your family. And this open-ended question is very powerful because it gives them the autonomy to share things that they like, things that they don't like. It could be their success, the children's success. It could be their disappointments in their spouse, family dynamics, culture. It can be anything. And all you need to do is to just sit there and listen and empathize.
Beautiful. So the question is, how's your family structure like?
Yes.
Wow. Okay. And it's up to their interpretation on how they answer that question, right?
Exactly.
Okay. I love this. Give us one more.
Okay. Okay. There's another thing I like to ask is
Yes.
that when things happen, all right, should something happen yesterday, for example, what is one thing that you would like to tell your loved ones?
So if something happens to you, what would you like to tell your loved ones? Like a message, is it?
A message.
Wow, this is a good question. It's a difficult question to answer sometimes because we don't think about it all the time, right?
Exactly. So they will take time to think because it's very unusual that someone asks them this question.
But I love that question because you kind of prime me to really start thinking about the future.
Yes.
Isn't that what estate planning is all about, right?
Yes.
Okay, now they always say 3 is a charm. You gave us
Okay.
2. One last one. That would be great as a very good icebreaker question to build intimacy.
Okay. The last question I always ask is that, why are you here today? I mean, that depends, right? If let's say they already know it's an estate planning appointment, instead of just opening up my laptop and share with them about what I can do, I will always ask them like, actually, why are you here today? Why do you decide to meet me?
And that's a great question, even if I'm not doing estate planning.
Yes.
Like if I'm meeting for consulting or I'm meeting for a social appointment, I can even ask you like, Eugene, I know you're busy. Like, why do you choose to meet me?
Yes.
It's also a great question, right?
Exactly.
So guys, take your notes. I've just helped you ask 3 questions. Great for intimacy.
Yeah.
And then you said divide by self-interest.
Yeah.
Okay, how do we divide by self-interest?
Okay. So in this line, self-interest basically means the commissions that we receive, right? And prospects or even clients, sometimes they know or it's something that they hear about that you get a lot of commission by selling. And when they start to see your ads like, oh, you are an achiever, you are MDRT, means they do not know what does MDRT stands for, but they know that you are successful. But in other words, you earn a lot of money.
So even things like, oh, I'm a top producer might actually be counterproductive to your branding.
If they do not know you well enough.
Or they do not know the award well enough.
That's right. So to clients who know that you are hardworking, who have been with you for a while, when you achieve an award, they'll be so happy for you. They will be raving for you because they know that you're hardworking. Like you meet them in the night, like 10 p.m., you are still there, closing some paperwork, explaining to them, have not taken your dinner. They understand. So they'll be happy for you when you tell them that you clinched certain awards, right? But if you are talking to prospects and you tell them that, oh, I am an achiever, to them it's like, so you earn a lot of commissions. And if I sign with you, you are going to get more than I'm going to get out
Eugene,
of it.
this is amazing. Hearing from somebody from outside in, this is like a breath of fresh air.
Yeah. So what I started back then was, you need to make sure that your self-interest is as low as possible. If you want the trust equation to be as high as possible, your denominator has to be as low, right?
Yes.
So what I do is that I always share with them, say, hey, you don't worry, during this whole process, I'll explain to you, in fact, how much is the setup cost, how much that you potentially will need to put it in, and I'll also reveal to you what is the estimated comp that I'll be getting, so that you know everything before you enter.
Wow, transparency.
And over the last couple of years, have been a lot of transparency that we need to share with the client, all this stuff, right? Before they enter into a transaction or relationship with us.
Beautiful. This is like a complete video that we can record, how to build trust in a very, very systematic way. I appreciate that, Eugene. I really love it.
Welcome.
Maybe a final question before we dive into the high net worth selling, right? Private bankers.
Okay.
Like I could also do my estate planning with private bankers, right?
Yeah.
So why would they choose you?
Okay.
How do you set yourself apart? How different is your service from those private bankers?
Okay. There are a couple of factors over here. I always choose to believe that we are in a different market. Okay. I mean, there's some form of overlapping, but we are serving different markets. So in a private banking space, clients would like the entire ecosystem of what a private banking experience is. So the private banker usually provides that relationship, provides that platform to source out for the best expertise for the client. But a private banker can't really sit there and listen to the client for long, because the private banker ultimately needs to bring in certain specialists to help the client, right? But when you talk about a private banking experience and maybe a tier just below private banking, this is what I call the underserved, the mass affluent market. Those who can't really get into private banking, or maybe they can get into private banking, but they are probably one of the last few priority based on the net worth. Where a lot of financial advisors may feel that they want to focus on the private banking space, but they don't have that ecosystem.
Yeah, and you will always lose out, right?
You will always lose out.
Correct. I remember one of my students was fighting very hard to win this high net worth client, and the bank found out about it and started offering a lot of different things like loans, reducing interest rates. These are things that you can't really do as a financial advisor.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. But the good news is it's 90% close to winning the case, which only goes to show that when it comes to selling to a person or let's not even use the word selling. When it comes to helping people in a financial advisory, it's never just about all these services. It's really that human touch, the relationship, the trust.
That's right.
Right? Now, so going back to you said that it's a bit different because you target not the private banking space, but you target the what we call the mass affluent, which is an untapped market.
Yeah, correct. So many times when you talk about high net worth, there's so many connotations to high net worth, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, well, how do you even define high net worth?
Like if you are a millionaire, you can be a high net worth, but to the private banking space, $1 million can't get you anywhere. You can't even open an account.
Okay.
Yeah. So when we talk about high net worth, I think we need to define what kind of clients we want to work with, right? And there's a ready pool of clients that I feel that they are just one tier below private banking, or they may be able to get into the private banking space, but they just do not wish to go there.
So let's call them the mass affluent, shall we?
Mass affluent.
And that brings us very nicely to part 2 of our interview, right? Which is understanding this mass affluent clients.
Yeah.
So would you be able to give us a demographics? Generally, you have served them for so long already. How they like? How do they behave? What do they think? How old are they?
Okay, so these are the people that I like to work with because the mass affluent, they are humble. They are humble because they know that they are not the ultra rich. But yet at the same time, they know that they are not just an ordinary consumer, right? So what they really need would be information. And you talk about today's day and age, information is everywhere. So they need somebody who is expert, who has authority in the field. And they need this person to be able to share with them what other people are doing. So one of the key things I realized, I try to test a lot of strategies. And the moment when I say, a couple of my clients are also doing that, and they will start to like lend me their ears and say, okay, so what did they do? How is it like? It's like a bit of FOMO here and there. But what they really need is to tap on your experience, right? Like what are some of the discovery or new findings that you have discovered, or what are people doing in my profile?
So let's break it apart a little bit, right? So in other words, of course, it takes experience. Like the more clients you work with, the more valuable we become because no one has access to all this information except you.
Yeah.
Right? So you're able to give those information away. But maybe let's take a step back and probably not talk about estate planning first, but tell me a little bit about these mass affluent people, right? Like what do they like? What do they not like? Because somehow, there's always saying, right? Chinese, there's a saying that 知己知彼,百战百胜. Like you know yourself, but you know the person you're working with. You fight 1,000 battles, you win 1,000 battles.
Yeah.
And a lot of young people, or at least the people listening, might feel very intimidated with this mass affluent. So help us demystify them.
Okay. Now, mass affluent, these people that I work with, they are generally just typical, ordinary individuals.
Employees or entrepreneurs?
A mixture of both. Whether they are employees, they are more in the white collar, probably household income above 15K. They are pretty ordinary. When you speak with them, all right, don't be fooled by their appearance. Don't be fooled by the car that they drive. They are actually typical individuals that you meet. So for example, when I see a mass affluent, where this mass affluent have kids, I can relate because I have kids. And we'll talk about where to go, where to bring your kids, and education, right? And now it's HBL. So you have common topics, right? So you don't really need to worry, there are mass affluent, we are of a different league. You just find the common topics to relate to them.
I love that. In other words, stop seeing them as a mass affluent, because mass affluent means they make a lot of money and possibly make more money than you. And because of that difference doesn't help you connect.
That's right.
Connection is always about similarity, right?
Yeah.
So that means to stop seeing the differences, start seeing the similarities.
Yeah, exactly.
And you said family would be a great topic.
Family would be a great topic because, when I do estate planning, I need to talk about the family, the values, family's mission. So these are the things that you can connect well with a mass affluent. There's many more things. If they do not have kids, that will be about the business. So for entrepreneurs, what I do, of course, back of my mind is always about succession, right? In estate planning, we talk about what happens if you're no longer around. Who pays the debts? Do you have a plan for that? But before going to there, we need to establish some common grounds. Remember the trust equation?
Yes.
Yeah. So I will always ask, how do you get started? How's your business? How do you get started to where you are today?
I love that. So if they are employees or if they are of a certain age, they probably have a family, talk about their family.
Yeah.
Right? If they don't, then talk about their jobs or talk about their business.
Yeah, correct.
Beautiful. I think that's a great tip. Now let's dive into the third segment, right, which is incorporating estate planning into the sales advisory. So you have already explained what estate planning is. So could you tell us, we have a lot of financial consultants listening to this. So how can they start incorporating estate planning into their sales advisory process?
Okay, now that's a great question. Over the years, I have heard many financial advisors who thinks that setting up a will is considered estate planning. Okay, and they start to say, they start to ask me like, Eugene, aside from a will, what other tools or what other things can I do? Then I would have constitute being expert in estate planning.
Good question. Yeah.
Before we even talk about the tools, you can read out about the tools out there. But before you even go into that, there's always one important question that you have to ask yourself, right? Like, what is the role of a financial consultant? This is the question I always ask financial consultants. So some tell me that, it's to make sure that they have enough to retire. Some will say, make sure that in the event if they are hospitalized, that there's a plan that pays for them. It will not drain up their resources.
Fair.
Now, all these are great answers. But if you were to summarize what is your role, it is to ensure that when money is needed, it gets into the hands of the rightful beneficiary. And the beneficiary may be a client who is still alive, but if he's not alive, that will be his loved ones. So I always believe that is the role of a financial consultant. Right? So we have been focusing a lot of, if the client is around, he is alive, it's easy, you just call him up, pay him the check. But what if he's no longer around? That is like the other half of the equation. So in other words, what is important for a financial consultant to do before you even talk about wills, trusts, family office? It is important to ask yourself this question. Like, are you delivering value in ensuring that the money will reach the right person when something happens? When nothing happens, client is alive, it's easy, right? But when he's no longer around, then what happens?
And there are multiple scenarios for that, right?
Yeah. So the moment you create a conversation or you start a conversation with your client, that itself is in a process of estate planning already, without any tools.
So what would be a question I should memorize, or at least I should try asking these days to start my client on a estate planning journey? Besides the one you taught me, which is what's your family structure, right? Okay. Or how if today is your last day of your life, what messages? Like, if you come to proper financial planning, what would be a good question to ask? Okay.
I believe one of the best questions you can always ask your client is, how would you like your current wealth to be distributed to your loved ones?
Wow, simple enough, but yeah, it opens up a whole new conversation.
Yeah. It's a simple question, but the clients or the prospects will tell you the difficulties by themselves.
Like what? Give us a sneak peek.
Okay.
What kind of general difficulties do you keep hearing from them?
So imagine I would ask that question to Mr. A.
Yeah.
Say, so how would you like to distribute? Would you have your car, your cryptos and all that?
Yeah.
First of all, the client would think for a while and say, to my children, but wait a minute, maybe not a lump sum, maybe not to my eldest kid, but my third daughter is not very savvy. So they will come up with a solution, but yet there will be some barriers. And then all you need to do is, why do you say that? And then they will tell, because this thing happened, I don't really feel that she can manage, and she's getting married. They will just tell you everything. and you just have to empathize and say, oh, that's true. And that is asset planning, because you are actually equipping your client to first think ahead.
And I love that. And you're creating a space for them to imagine that if they're not around, how their wealth should be distributed. And they realize that they're very unprepared.
Yeah, you're right.
And then from then we discuss the tools that's available to help solve those problems that the client bring up.
Yes.
Like the one, okay, see if I'm right? Like the one you said, like, I want to give, for example, if my child is autistic, right? I wanted to give the money, but obviously my autistic child will not have the financial savviness to manage the money, which means he or she needs a guardian. And that's when you probably also need a trust fund to slowly release the money to that person, right? Rather than giving the money all the way.
Exactly.
So then these tools become meaningful.
Yeah.
I love that. So now, how can our listeners, right, start getting themselves proficient, in certified even, to be able to do what you do?
Okay.
What are some of the pathways?
There are relevant courses in the industry, and it's a good starting point to get equipped and to have some awareness about the different blind spots that, associated with estate planning. I think this is a good start, but I will always say this, go back to your clients, because in every industry, when you have a ready pool of clients, that is the best place to start your estate planning business. To go back to your clients, do a review. I mean, yes, you can do the usual review, right? How's your investments doing? How's your insurance plan and all that? But I think one of the very key component in a typical review is always to inform the client that, hey, after with me for a couple of years, there's actually another aspect of financial planning that I would love to help you with. And just talk to the client. And it's a very easy, common topic, because all you need to do is to ask questions.
That magic question. Could you repeat the magic question again?
Yeah. So how would you like to distribute your assets, whatever you have, to your loved ones?
And then once they got all this information ready, where are some of the sources, or where can they go to get like credible information? I mean, God forbid, I hope they don't go to Google and get those information. Like, are there places that they should be going?
There are tons of information online, but unfortunately, if you are looking at real practical experience, not many to start off with. And I think one of the best ways to get information is to talk to your colleagues who have been through that. People who have, like, for example, if today I speak with 10 of my clients and you speak with 10 of your clients, we would have enough
20 case studies
to share and say, hey, this client, he has this issue. He's worried about his son. Then how? Yeah, so that's a very good starting point for advisors to start with their clientele. And because the trust has been established, they do not need to build the trust again, like how I did it when I was way more than 10 years ago.
And would you say that that's when then the will writing comes in? Like, you don't just go to a client and say, hey, you want to write a will or not? Like,
exactly.
Because they don't see the meaning behind it. But the minute I ask all these questions and my instructions become clear, then obviously a will is already in the progress of being created already, right?
Exactly.
So that kind of I wanna talk about your book a little bit, right? Because Eugene actually got me your book, and I kind of like it. That's you and your son, right?
Yeah, and my daughter is at the back.
And your daughter is at the back. And your wife, right?
Yeah.
So the title of the book is Living a Legacy of Love. So who is this book written for? Is it written to financial advisors, or is it written to the end user, the mass affluent?
Okay. Actually, the book is written originally for end consumers, my clients. But I begin to realize that, in fact, financial advisors do find that handy before they talk to their client to strike conversations. So I many years ago, before I wrote this book, I went to the library and I did some research. So I borrowed a few estate planning books to read. Unfortunately, as I browsed through the books, I realized that there are so many technical jargons. And before you finish the first chapter, you are probably lost. So what I began to realize is that why is there such a lack of awareness in this area is because a lot of books are written by like legal practitioners.
Yeah.
And they are all just mainly theories without practical experience. So the reason why I wrote this book for my prospects and my clients is to share with them, actually, estate planning can be very simple. The layman can totally understand what is estate planning, and it's meant for them. And along the years, as I shared the book, and then there are financial consultants wanting to purchase and say, hey, I learned a lot because I have a family myself, I have loved ones, and it applies to me as how I relate to my clients.
And you just said something that actually the best way to practice estate planning is to practice it on your own family first. Then you already have one case study.
Exactly.
And you're saying that I can learn it from this book.
Yes.
So how do I get this book? Like where do people go to get this book?
Okay. You can actually purchase it online on my website, Securing Generations, or you can also find it at Kino Kuniya at Orchard Road.
Which is a local bookstore.
Yeah.
So what I'll do is I'll put your link on the show notes and make sure that my the people can listen, can do this. Now, I also understand you teach, right? You teach legacy planning. So you can actually teach financial advisors also how to plan legacy for their families, right?
Yes, that's right.
Tell me more about that. I'm curious to sign up all my mentees for that.
Okay.
Like how do you do it?
Yeah, I think the reason why I'm into the teaching of estate planning is because there's actually a lack of frameworks that advisors can use. So I've been hearing this a lot, like, oh, estate planning, I know a bit here, a bit there. I know it's a will, I know it's a trust, but there's no proper framework. Like when you learn driving, they have a 8-session course, right? You start with the theory, the basic theory, then after that another theory, and then you have to take the practical sessions, parallel parking, reverse parking. Okay, you pass class 3. But in estate planning, it's very different. It's a lot of course in the theory, that aspect of estate planning. But in the practical aspect, not many people you can go to. So one of the key things that I realized in why I want to train and I want to share is because it's all about the experiences that I've been receiving over the last couple of years. And all these experiences actually taught me some form of framework to, like just now the earlier questions that you asked me, like how do you open up, and when a client says this, what do you do? There's a simplified process of estate planning. If you read the book, you can read it in a day. Many people tell me they read it in a day, and it's meant to be read in a day. It is as simple as just a framework. And that is the whole idea behind the course that I'm teaching.
So if let's say a financial advisor sign up for your course, like how long is your course? Okay.
So the good news is I've just gotten a funding, FTS funding of 90%. So the first 2-day webinar will be on the 25th and 26th of November.
Okay, so still in time, right, for the final sprint. Would you say that learning about estate planning can actually help us open more sales opportunities in this next 3 months?
Definitely. I think one of the key things that can help to up a financial consultant sales is to, one, referrals. Second is to value at your client.
Correct. That means I shouldn't be thinking about, I'm going to make money from this estate planning, but the estate planning becomes a very attractive conversation that will allow me to have a deep understanding of my client's assets, my client's worries, and that also make me a better financial advisor.
Yeah, because in the process, there are actually a lot of hidden opportunities where you can cross-sell, can upsell.
I love that. Now, let's close with this, all right? We are, as of this recording, we have 3 more months to go before we end 2021. And you've been a financial advisor before, you understand how it goes. The last quarter is the final sprint and everybody is really running, dashing for cash, right? Wanting to do well. What would be your best advice for all the financial consultants and advisors listening to this episode, so that for them to be able to succeed?
Okay, I think the best advice now is to stay focused. I'm not saying that you should not venture to new grounds, but always look back what you have been doing that is giving you the sales. What have you been doing that is successful, and to try to repeat it. Because with just a couple of months ago, at least 2 months for final sprint, you don't really have a lot of time to explore. So if you really want to pump up and to clinch that award or to finish up your sales, your gaps, so to speak, is always going back to what worked well for you.
I love that, because success leaves clues, right? And,
right.
And the thing is that the problem with a lot of us is that we always like the next big idea, the next big hack. But I learned from a lot of successful entrepreneurs that business is boring.
Yeah.
And you should not put emotion inside it, right? If it works, don't change it. Just keep pressing that button until you squeeze it dry like a sugar cane.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, like a sugar cane. I love that. classic to our podcast. The title of our podcast is #highly sought after. So I'm going to end today's interview with this question. I mean, you've been in the business for so many years. What do you think is one thing that has helped you become highly sought after among the mass affluent here in Singapore?
Okay. Back when I first started more than 12 years ago, estate planning is really something you heard about it, but not many people are talking about it, right? But in today's context, estate planning is everywhere. There are people talking about setting up trust, setting up will. But I think one of the key things that I've learned is always to be bold and always try to have that blue ocean strategy. In fact, most of the things that I've been doing is always about trying and conquering new grounds. That newspaper article was just one of the many things that I've did.
Get like writing into Sunday Times and say, hey, can I be featured, right?
Yeah.
Awesome.
So something funny about that is that I wrote in, okay, and they decided to feature me. But 10 years later, I was featured in 2019 again. They approached me.
Wow.
Yeah. So you see, it's about
full circle.
Yeah. You have to try out different things. In terms of like wearing a specs, right? It's about, after I read a book and it talks about, hey, why not? This is how you develop credibility. And I started to try. So in my life, it's always about trying, exploring. I mean, when I look back, are there things that failed, did not work out? I believe so. Tons of them, but I don't remember them. I remember more in terms of what worked well, and that personal satisfaction that you get. You can't find it in a book or online. Yeah.
Beautiful. I mean, you just reminded me, I read a book called The Originals. And I may get the numbers wrong, but here's roughly how it goes. Like Mozart created 800 classical pieces, but only 8 of them were recognized. Picasso produces about 1,200 art pieces, but eventually we only remember that 2 to 3. Michelangelo wrote a lot of poems. I can't remember the exact number, but that's that one classic. Right. And so they realized that, all these masters, right, are great at their craft. They're able to create masterpieces because they experimented a lot with their work. And it's on the year where they create the most work, it's the year that they create the best work as well.
Yeah.
And I love that. Thank you for at least inspiring all of us to continue experimenting, continue testing new things, because I truly believe that I think today, if you want to be highly sought after, you got to be different, then be better. Because if you can't even stand out, then people won't even have a chance to know whether you're good or not.
Yeah, I mean, just to end off, I was just sharing with my son earlier before I came on the show, is that, kids these days, they are very fascinated about gadgets. So he's raving about the iPhone 13 and how different is it compared to 12 and how, So I was just sharing with him, an idea just flashed through my mind. I said, hey, son, innovation it's not limited to just the IT space. So today, your daddy, I am not in the IT space. I'm just a consumer of IT, right? But that does not limit us to think out of the box, to experiment, and can be in any industry. So, I mean, most of us, your mentees probably, they're not in the IT space.
Yeah.
So instead of just thinking, how IT has been revolving and there are so many new products in so fast, fintech, I think instead of just thinking from that perspective, why don't we think about, hey, I think that in the kind of speed of innovation, it means that we can apply that same speed in what we are doing.
Beautiful. Yeah. If IT can innovate so quickly, produce an iPhone every year, then why can't we do the same in our business as well?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, that's a great way to end today's interview. Big high five to you. Thank you so much.
Eric.
Thank you so much, Eugene, for coming here. So this is Eugene Soo, and it's the estate planning episode. But I think that I can also name this episode the trust episode. I kind of really like that formula: credibility plus reliability plus intimacy divided by self-interest. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter whether you're a financial advisor, an entrepreneur, or content creator. Your unfair advantage is your ability to build immense trust in the people that you're working with. So go watch the video again and look out for the segment where he shares the trust formula. Go implement that, and I believe in a very short amount of time, you will also be highly sought after in your own industry. If you love this episode, you will love a lot of other episodes that comes out every week on YouTube. So remember to hit the subscribe button, hit the bell notification, and I'll see you at the next video.